Good morning. Oh, this is close this. That's better. Too much light. Um, so good morning. It's Tuesday, and we're here. We've made it to August, which is crazy, right? I feel like we just were talking about summer and how summer was on the horizon, and now summer is well and truly here, and we're actually, I would say, on the downslope of the summer, which seems crazy, but there you are. So yeah, um, beautiful weather past couple of days. I was walking the dog yesterday, and I just simply could not believe that it was August. It felt like, mid to end September. So I don't know. Uh, I'm sure we're going to get some real hot weather back. It seems like we do get this though. I recall sort of the past couple of years having some cool weather in August, and then September really coming to heat things up again. So maybe we're in a pattern of that. I don't know, but in any event, I'm not complaining too much right now. Um, all right. Well, let's see. I think over the weekend we were going to talk about the Yamas. We ended up talking about the Niyamas, um, which is good. But let's touch on the Yamas just briefly, um, just to remind everybody about them. We'll go through them more in depth, as time goes by. Um, I try to do that once a year or so, but we could certainly do. We probably already did it this year, but we could do it again. It doesn't. It never. There's no reason not to repeat it, because if we look at the limbs of yoga, right? So we have the limbs of yoga. When uh, so, one of the big yoga thinkers put this all together, the visualization they were talking about was a tree, right? So the tree has limbs, and the limbs are 8, and those limbs begin with the yamas and the niyamas. A lot of times people think of yoga as beginning with the asana, and for most people it does, because that's how they are introduced to the yoga. Good morning, Deb. Um, right? You go to a yoga class, you see people doing yoga, you are familiar with the poses, the asana. That's, for most of us, our beginning for yoga. But the beginning, truly, of the yoga path is the yamas and the niyamas. And that makes sense, right? Because these are the beginnings in how we learn to treat ourselves and to treat others in a way that is yogic and sustainable and sufficient. Right? How would it be if you were practicing your asana without ahimsa? Right? How would it be if you were um, doing these poses without any regard for your own well-being? Not a very good situation, right? So the yamas and the niyamas can come first. They don't always for everybody. I think, pardon me, in the way we do yoga in this country, it's kind of the flip, right? People start with asana, and then if they're interested in more, they might learn a little bit about the yamas and niyamas. But I would say um, the yamas and the niyamas are a good, you know, they're an even better introduction, right? They're a beginning, and when you have started with that, when you have some um, regard and understanding of the yamas and niyamas, then you're going to be able to do to do your best with the asana. You're going to be able to put that asana to its use and intention, using that framework, I think. Yeah. So niyamas we talked about. Yamas. So niyamas are the way we treat ourselves, the internal ethics, right? How we interact with ourselves and treat ourselves, right? That doesn't mean that the yamas don't also apply to you. They do, and how you treat yourself, but they are more outwardly focused. So first one is ahimsa, biggest one, the umbrella, we say, of all of the yamas, and the niyamas even, right? The most important thing, if you don't learn anything about yoga, the only thing you learn about yoga is ahimsa, I would say you've accomplished something good. So if you just want to work on one yama to begin with, maybe one yama for the most part, um, ahimsa is so all encompassing. Um, it is so pervasive. There is so many ways that this is important that I feel like it's always the beginning. It always has to be the beginning, right? That is my tattoo, right? Because it's the beginning. It's the start of it all. Ahimsa. So ahimsa is non-harming, doing no harm. Right? Himsa is harming, and ahimsa. So in Sanskrit, when you put an a in front of something, it's like our version. It's like non, right? Or how we put non in front of something to make it the opposite, right? So ahimsa. Um, Now we know that this is right. Um, this is how we want to treat others. This is how we want to treat everything. This is how we want to walk through life, right? And this can take so many different forms, right? We want to be kind and thoughtful of other people and their feelings and their needs, right? We want to do as much little damage as possible, right? I mean, so things like uh, being aware of how much you use in terms of resources and your environmental impact, right? Um, being being careful. My husband is going crazy about. He got a bee in his bonnet about cleaning. We have these brick sidewalks out in front of the house, which over the years, you know, lack of foot traffic has caused the grass to kind of grow over the edges. So he's decided he's going to clear them all out. And he did. He worked really hard at it. But there's a lot of grass in between the cracks. So he said, hey, I'm going to get some Roundup and spray. And what do you think I said to that? I said, oh, hell no, you're not. Um, Find another way, right? Find another way. So he looked around and he's looking up some stuff. And I don't know how well it's going to work. I'll let you know when we find a way. But, right, spraying Roundup because I don't want grass growing through the cracks of my grass, that is not using my resources wisely, right? That is a big environmental impact for something very ridiculous, right? That's, it's just a vanity thing. It's a cosmetic thing. It doesn't affect the usefulness of the sidewalk in any way, right? So we think about that. Those are things we want to evaluate, right? Is what we want to do worth the cost of what it takes to do it? Are we harming, or are we doing well? Are we minimizing? Now, we can't live on Earth without doing some form of harm, right? Um, there are some people who take it pretty extremely. There are people who will only eat, right? There's a religious group in India called the Jains, and they will only eat food that is taken with no harm. So fruit from a tree, that, comes off the tree, something that is harvested without damaging the plant, right? Obviously, no meat and no animal, products per se, and no root vegetables of any kind, right? So, I mean, it's a whole, people think it's crazy, like it's really extreme, but I mean, there's a whole religious group that's their way of living. So it can be done, right? You can really scale up your lack of impact on the environment and other things, but everyone has to figure that out for themselves. Where are you comfortable with, what level? And for most of us, it's somewhere in between, right? So it's a big one, right? I cannot emphasize how much that is an important part of being a yogi. And it doesn't mean you will never do harm, right? But you minimize it. You try to minimize it, and you're aware of it, right? And maybe even as important as you take responsibility for it, right? You understand when you've done wrong, and maybe try to make amends, right? Um, we certainly don't try to minimize that, or we don't try to blame other people for it, right? We That would be compounding, right? A harm with another harm, right? So, Ahimsa, that in itself is a practice. That could be the practice of a lifetime. It's just working on that, not harming, right? Trying to walk lightly through the earth. Um, so, big one. Next one, Satya, truthfulness, right? I mean, makes sense. Don't tell lies. Live your truth. Don't try to be something you're not. Don't try to hide who you are. Um, be true to yourself. Be true to others. Be that person that other people can rely on, because you aren't pretending to be something that um, you can't sustain. This is what happens, right? People want to pretend to be something that they're not, and then the terrible compounding of this is that you can't sustain that, right? You can't support that. Either you've forgotten which lies you've told to which people, or people expect things of you that are not what you can offer, right? And most people who have relationships problems, this is where it stems from, right? You are not presenting an authentic version of yourself. You are pretending to be something that you cannot and will not and do not want to do. Why? What's the point, right? I guess a short-term gain, right? A short-term relationship, some short-term meeting of needs, but you are doing what? You're breaking the first rule when you do stuff like that. Right? Be who you are. If you don't like who you are, change who you are. Improve. Do something different. But don't pretend that you are something different, because everyone will expect much more from you, right? They will expect a certain level of whatever it is that you're projecting. If you don't have that to back it up, things cannot work out. So be who you are, and be content with that. You don't need to be any more than who you are just now. Asteya, non-stealing, don't take things from others, makes sense. Don't take responsibility from others. Don't take uh, um, credit for others people's work, right? You can see how this ties in with some of the other stuff. Um, don't take other people's joy. Don't um, don't be in their space. Don't push them out in favor of your own voice, right? Give other people a chance. Let other people have their space. You have your space. Um, a lot of times people do feel like what they have to say is so important, or their participation is so important to them that they drown out everybody else. I know everybody knows people like this who just can't stop talking and can't help um, interjecting their own story on top of other people's story. Don't be that person, right? Don't let and many times it comes from a very good place. It comes from, or if not even a good place, kind of a scared place or a nervous place. It's not. It isn't. Um, they aren't maybe trying to do harm. They're just awkward. They're not sure what to do. They aren't comfortable with the silence. So be comfortable with the silence. Allow other people to have their say. You don't have to comment on everything. You don't have to have an opinion on everything. Or if you do, you certainly don't have to share it. It's not required. It's not necessary. Honestly, I feel like if in this world we spoke less and listened more, we would be much better off. Brahmacharya. Why is it that like the ones near the end are always like the funny names? It seems like to me they're longer and a little trickier. Brahmacharya is this idea of moderation and self-restraint. Um, in I think it's come to be thought of as abstinence or celibacy, and uh, in some in some practices, in some yogic, in like terms of a yogic practice, if you were living in a monastery or an ashram or something, yeah, that would probably be part of your uh, brahmacharya, would be that. But for people who are just living out in the world doing their thing, yoga, lay people, shall we say, it certainly doesn't, it's not required. That is, but the idea of restraint and using your sexuality and your appetites, the desires and the things that you do, using them wisely, not overdoing it, right? Not being, you know, dissipating that energy, right? So we think of this desire as an energy. So we want things, right? We might want a connection with someone. We might want food, or we might want entertainment, or all of these things that sort of move energy in the body, right? There is obviously a limit to how much of that is healthy and good for us. We need to know our limits and how our limits affect others, how our actions affect others. That, this act of uh, taking things to excess is not only bad for us, it's bad for everybody around us. So knowing where our outward edges are, our limitations of things, and staying within them, right? Not overdoing, not um, allowing everything to just run wild. Having some self-restraint, having some, you know, I mean, not really willpower, because this is, um, it's not that you're trying, you're saying, oh no no no, you're knowing, okay, I'm not even going to go there. I'm not even to that point where it's excessive. I know how to do things correctly, right? In alignment with all the other yogic things we talk about, right? It all kind of falls into place. Once you start following one after another, they kind of fit together. And aparigraha. Um, this is kind of the mental aspect of that. So not coveting, not being greedy. So at the root of this idea, this covetousness and greed is fear, right? It's fear of not having enough, of being without. And um, that is something we need to really let go of as yogis. We may not always have everything we need, but, well, I shouldn't say that. We may think we don't have what we need, right? And there may be times in our life that we have had less. If you grew up like that, if you've had times of great deprivation, this may be a very hard one for you, because that may have become hardwired in your body to fear that, to really dread that feeling of not having what you need. Um, but we need to try to overcome that, to try to let go of that fear. Um, Knowing that, right, you're here, you've made it this far, you've managed to um, get what you need. You may not have everything you want, right, depending on how extravagant your desires are, um, but you probably have everything you need in terms of food to eat, a place to live, um, some security, um, some comfort, right? We don't need that much as humans, right? We really don't. Um, our basic needs are small. And we, in our Western society, uh, most people have well and truly met that bar and exceeded. But yet they're still not happy. They're still striving for more. They still want that next thing, um, which lets us know that none of those things are really very important, right? Because there is no end to them. The bar just keeps shifting. Um, so getting less focus on that is important. Um, Knowing, right, how unimportant it is, that being greedy, that hoarding resources is really against yogic practice. Um, you don't need as much as you have, I guarantee you. And the less you can do, the less you can make do with, the happier you will be. And I know this maybe doesn't sound like it makes sense, right? Because I think in our culture, the idea of having more and more seems like the path to success and to happiness. That we will not be happy until we have this next thing, and then this next thing, and then this next thing. Um, but as we collect things, as we bring things into our life, they own us. They take a piece of our attention and our time and our effort to maintain them, to care for them, to store them, to walk around the pile of them in our house. So be careful what you give your time to. And know that at the essence, what you have here is all you need. You do need some things to support the body, but those are pretty basic. Um, and beyond that is just extra. So I think I read a study somewhere that up to a point, right, we need things. So I forget what they said. It was a minimum. It was like a minimum level, and it depends on where you live, right? The cost of living, but it was somewhere around like maybe $50,000 or so, right? Enough to pay your bills, buy your food, uh, give yourself a certain level of security and leisure time, right? So you aren't desperately afraid that you're going to have everything taken from you in a moment. Um, but beyond that, really people's happiness level and people's level of contentment actually dropped the more they made, which is very interesting, right? That is a very interesting um, situation, right? I think most people would not expect that. They would think, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be so happy. I'm making $200,000, $300,000. Yay! But the truth of the matter is, it's not the case. After a certain point, it's like, eating delicious food, right? Eating a dessert. If you've ever gotten a dessert from a restaurant, the first couple of bites are delicious, right? They really hit the spot. They really are what you want. But after that, you're just kind of eating that dessert. It's getting too sweet. It's kind of rich. You don't really need it. You don't really want it, but yet you're eating it because it's there and whatever. You paid money for it. So we could see how too much of a good thing even is just not good at all. So um, yeah, don't hoard. Don't be greedy. It will do worse things for you than good things, right? Even though we think not. But so yamas, right? Um, the yamas and the niyamas, they are a framework with which to begin our journey. Um, they are, if everyone could do this, if everyone could do the niyamas and niyamas, the world would be a very different place. You can imagine. But not so much, right? It, this isn't an abstract idea. Like in, I think in a lot of, say, religious traditions, we might have rules that we are supposed to follow because, you know, that's the way to heaven, or that's, there's some payoff, right, in the future. But we're not really, we're just told that this is what we should do, um, for an abstract kind of reason, or just because it's the right thing to do, or whatever. And what I like about the yamas and the niyamas is it is, right, the right thing to do, but it's also the the most effective thing to do. Right? This is, um, if you follow these things, you are going to not just be a good person, not just like, have other people think, oh my gosh, what a good person she is. It's not about that. It's not about impressing other people. It's not about um, following some abstract rules. It's about improving your life. And this is how you improve your life. One step, one um, action at a time, in a very easy to understand way, right? There is nothing, there are definitely some nuances to this stuff, but at its core, it is very simple. We do these things. As we do these things, we see changes. We see changes in the way we feel about ourselves, in the way other people treat us, in the way our life starts going. Um, and they're good changes, right? And we keep doing it, right? We keep doing it forever. We don't stop. There's no end to this. It is a constant. And we get better at it and better at it as we go. Um, and believe me, it gets easier, right? So yeah, it just gets easier. I can't really explain it to you, but this is another beautiful thing about yoga, is that you don't have to take my word for it. You don't have to believe this. Um, yoga is not an act of faith. It is an act of transformation, right? We see this happen as we do it, as we step through these, as we move through these steps. You see changes. You understand why these are so important. As you're reading this and hearing this, like in your brain, you go, oh yeah, this makes a lot of sense, right? But it's not until you actually do the steps that you feel you understand. Like what you're doing with these steps on a very high level is moving your own body, your vibration into alignment with the vibration of the universe. Right? That's the big that's the big goal, right? So when we are vibrating down here and the universe is vibrating over here, it's hard to make that connection, right? So everything, and this is why the yamas and the niyamas are at the beginning, and then asana, right? Everything, when we're moving towards trying to do all these things, trying to be in communication with the self, trying to hear that voice, We can't do that if we're not ready, right? So all of these yoga steps are preparation for this end goal, which is being in communication, being one with the universe. Right? And that is the end goal, right? But we're not going to get there till the end. Right? So isn't that funny? Like the goal, the ultimate goal, we don't see till the very end. We aren't going to get there next week and be like, okay, now I'm here, I'm done. No. It's when we pass, when we move from this state of being to the next, when we leave this physical body, is the end. It's the beginning, but it's also the end. It's the end of our sort of our activity here on earth. Our yogic path on earth ends with the passage of the self out from the body. Right? But along the way, we get better and better, right? We get more in alignment with the universe. We understand more about what we are meant to do, about our path, about how to help other people and help ourselves. We become enlightened, as they say, right? And enlightened, I love that word, because enlightened is also, it's part of this whole idea of the yoga teacher and the guru, right? The guru is not the person who gives you the knowledge. The guru is the person that turns on the light in the room where the books are. So you're in the dark, but the light goes on, and all of a sudden you see, oh, there's a lot of information here. There's a lot of things that I can learn to help me. And I was just before, now I see, right? Ah, okay. There's this, there's this, there's this. I'm going to try these different things and become enlightened, right? So you actually bring this light then into yourself. And you don't, then maybe you don't even need the light, right? Because you are the light. You've already absorbed that into yourself, so that you're getting closer and closer to the universe. You're getting closer to the real truth of things. And then the things like the Yamas and the Niyamas, when you're enlightened, when you've really absorbed all that, these things are what you're doing. You're not trying to do them, you're just doing them, right? You can't not do them, because after a certain point, that's the only way that makes sense, right? It's the only way that makes sense. But we aren't going to, I would say most of us aren't going to get there. I don't feel I'm there. I don't know if I'll ever be there. I don't, and but it's okay. You don't have to be there, right? I think of it like, if you've, right? If you're an Olympic, we're watching the Olympics right now, right? You watching any of the Olympics? These people are the top of their field, the best of the best. They're doing things with their bodies that human beings are not really designed to do. They're beyond, right? We were talking about weightlifters, and my son was like, why do they, they're just lifting up weights. What's the big deal? They can just get stronger, and then they can lift more weights and everything. And I'm like, okay, but think about it. These guys are at the edge, and girls, right? They're at the edge of what is possible for a human being. They are going beyond that again and again and again. As they set world records, they are lifting weights that no one else has done. They're constantly being injured, almost being injured, getting back from being injured, because they are on the edge. They're going out to the very edge. We might think of it the enlightened as this, right? They are at the top of what is possible, moving into the next. Most of us we're just maybe lifting some weights at the gym, right? We're doing good. We're right. That's following our yamas and niyamas. We are trying to improve our bodies. We're trying to be able to do more. But we may never be to that level because you know what these folks have to do to get there. It's a lot. There's a huge time commitment, huge commitment to a path that we may not want to do. We may not want to do now. We may never really want to be that committed to it. And that's okay because we are going to get the benefit. We are going to be having ourselves a really good life and a really we're going to be able to learn what we need to learn just by following these rules. We don't have to be an Olympic Yama and Niyamist. I mean, we could be, but we don't have to be. That's not the only way to get there. Um, it is, again, the work of a lifetime, maybe a few lifetimes. I don't know, what you believe, but right in yoga and yoga philosophy, this idea of reincarnation is a thing. It's a real belief. And what they would say is, if you're here, if you're interested in yoga, you're learning about yoga, it's because you did this in a past life, right? That people in the beginning stages, they don't care about this stuff, right? This only comes later, right? After you've already learned a lot of things, then you have more questions and you want to ask more. So if you're here, you're already in a sort of a high level interest of this. There's more to come, right? Um, those Olympic level people on the Niyamas and Yamas, they may have so many lifetimes to get to where they are. So don't feel like you have to do it one way or another. Just do what you want to do. Do what that desire is that bubbles up in you. Um, that is good. That is appropriate for where you are. Don't force that. Don't try to be more than, right? Don't try to be more than you are. Be what you are. Inhabit that and be content with that. Because that is beautiful. It is where you are. Right? All right. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how quickly I want to talk about these things. It just doesn't happen. It goes beyond. So yeah, if you see me starting to talk about yamas and niyamas, know that we're in for just talking because there's so much to say, and it's so important. It's such a vital part of this. And I'm already thinking about when we get back to Garfield Park and how the classes are not going to be like this at all. And we're not going to be able to talk about these things. I'll touch on them because I always do, but it's going to be in a much, much condensed form. So you guys are getting the long version. The short version is what we get in the public classes, right? Because it's different. It's a different format. I'm being paid to be there. And as such, it's a public place. It's being funded by community funds, by the government. So what I'm bringing is a much condensed version of what there is. Not everybody is comfortable talking about these things. Not everybody wants to go as deeply into yoga as I do, right? Um, and I'm okay. I think I'm okay with that. Um, I I would never want to imply that yoga is not a spiritual practice. It is, and I'm very clear about that in my classes. It is a spiritual practice, but spiritual is not religion, right? Spiritual is it is being aware of something higher than yourself, and it does not. It is not. It's not confined to one religion. It is simply an awareness. There is something greater than yourself. It could be anything. It could be um, it could be a million different names for this thing, this force. Um, Yoga is completely compatible with any religious structure that you may have, because all of the rules, all of the lessons are universal. I mean, if you are a person that practices religion, you know that the things that we're talking about are things that you have certainly heard in your own religious practice. This way of treating others, this, concern, all of these things are universal. Every religion has discovered these things for themselves. I mean, it's nothing new. Um, but what I like about yoga is it gives people who are perhaps uncomfortable with the idea of an organized religion a format to still practice um, some ethical behaviors towards themselves and others. It's a framework that is applicable to anything and anyone. Um, it is not, you don't have to believe one thing or another. You don't have to do anything. You just do it. You just practice. So we talk about that. We don't go into it as deeply, right? Um, but I feel like yoga, like strictly the asana without any mention of the spiritual, is um, you're missing a lot. You've lost a big chunk of what yoga is about. If you think about the limbs of yoga, we start with the yamas and niyamas. So if they're never mentioned in class, how is that yoga, right? It might as well just be a class for stretching and doing some, like Pilates or something, doing some like floor like exercises for your core and things like that. Which, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's great. I mean, that's a wonderful class to have, but it's not yoga. It's not the same thing. Um, and me, of course, I'm a yoga teacher, so I'm biased. I'm going to tell you that it's better to get both, right? Right? Why just do one when you can get both? Two for one. Um, that's what I like about yoga is it's got, the asana is good for your body, your movement is great, but the other stuff is even more important, right? And that's the stuff that works in conjunction with the asana. So talking about energy and vibrations, the asana move certain energies through the body. And at the same time, you're doing these other practices, and there's a synergy there, right? That is, you really can't replicate in any way. That is what makes yoga so unique as a practice. It is a physical practice, right? And you are definitely going to reap physical benefits from it. But it's also a spiritual practice, and you get benefits from that. And these two things together are greater than the sum of each of them, right? So it's like if you take all the ingredients for a cake, each one of those ingredients you don't maybe want to eat by themselves, but when you fit them all together and you bake it and you get this lovely cake, everyone wants to eat that, right? So the result of these two things together is something much greater than the beginnings and something really quite remarkable. So um, again, I'm biased. I'm a yoga teacher, so of course I'm gonna be pretty jazzed about that. But yeah, I can't. You know, that's why I do this, right? That's why I teach this, because yoga as a practice has become, it is such, simply transformed my life in ways that um, I will always be grateful for. My There is a day in the yogic calendar, let's say, called Guru Purnima. And it's basically happy birthday to your teacher. Right? It's a day in which you celebrate your teachers, right? Whoever they may be. And it's not, you don't have to contact your teacher and say, hey, thank you so much. But you could, but it is a day of remembrance for the teachers, right? So not just your teachers, I mean, certainly your teachers, but also their teachers and the teachers before them and the teachers that go all the way back throughout what they call the lineage. Right? So in yoga teaching, we call it the lineage, which is this idea that there is an unbroken connection from the beginnings of yoga to now, that there has been this passage of the knowledge from one to another. Right? And over the years, certainly it's gotten, if you ever played Whisper Down the Lane, you know how things can get distorted over time. But the idea of a lot of practices, a lot of people, and there's some realignment as time has gone by. So if things go off path, there are other people that pull it back, and it might go to one side, it might go to the other side, but it settles down in that middle path again. So we honor on Guru Purnima, we honor all of those people that have come before us. And that is why I teach, because I want other people to know about this. I want other people to have a taste of this. It's not going to be everybody's liking. Some people are going to taste it and think, oh, this is not for me, right? I'm not interested in this. This is not what I'm planning on doing right now. And that's okay, right? Yoga is for everybody. It is available for everybody, no matter what. But not everybody wants it right now. If you think of it like a food, right? You may not like certain things, but just like food, your taste can change as time goes by. You may find yourself more drawn to this. You may find yourself more interested in certain aspects of the yoga. All in good time, right? I love that phrase, all in good time. You don't have to do it all right now. You may not be ready or interested or whatever. Follow your internal self, right? Your internal self says, oh no, then not ready, right? Doing things before you're ready is a terrible idea, right? You won't do a good job. You'll hate it. You'll feel constantly inadequate, right? And unprepared. And that's a terrible feeling, right? To be always behind, the 8 ball, right? You know that the hammer is going to fall on you because you are not prepared and you have no idea what you're doing. Don't be that person, right? Just don't do it. Learn a little more. Take a little time. See what happens. When you have this calling, this desire to do this, then you'll be there. And you'll be ready. And that's a great feeling, right? That's like when you've actually done the reading and you know the teacher's going to call on you, but you're ready, right? That's where you want to be. That's the thing. All right. So I spent the whole time talking here. So yeah, Tuesday, happy Tuesday. I'll be back tomorrow, and I think we're going to do asana. I think we're just going to do asana. We're just going to do it. Because today we did, Saturday we did Niyamas. Today we did Yamas. And tomorrow we'll talk about asana a little bit, but mainly we're going to do asana because we're going to get back into the movement a little bit more. All right. Well, enjoy your day. Weather's not bad. It might rain a little, but still not bad. All right. See you tomorrow.